Hey, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk About Things and Stuff, where we talk about things and also stuff. I'm your host, Matt Parker, your friendly neighborhood youth guy, and this is my good friend over there, Caitlin.
Hey.
How you doing, Caitlin?
I'm all right.
All right. Yeah. Cool. And this nice fellow here is my good friend, Josh Hamlin. How you been doing today, Josh Hamlin?
I'm good. Just got off work. Busy day, so can relax now.
Yeah. So the kids just got out for summer. Does that change anything about your life?
Yeah. Noah went up to his grandpa's farm, so he got off school and then went there, and I haven't seen him since. So it's like he never came home from school.
That's actually kind of amazing.
It's kind of weird, but yeah, we'll pick him up one of these days.
One of these days.
One of these days.
Oh, does he ever feel like he's been forgotten places?
No, he would prefer if we forgot him up there.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever forgotten him anywhere?
Oh, I haven't.
Well, we won't make you tell stories.
That's not true. We left him here a few weeks ago. Because
I remember that.
Yeah, because Danielle drove and I drove. And I don't remember why. Well, he was hanging out with Tayson.
Oh, that's right.
But Peyton and I were leaving early or something like that, and we weren't going home. And I was like, hey, your mom's down here. Go down there and wait for her. Okay. Well, he didn't. And so Danielle thought, oh, well, Noah's with Josh. Cool. I could just go. And so they were just hanging out in the balcony.
Yeah. I was left at church a couple of times, I remember. They got home, turned around and came back. It was about a half hour. Yeah. So, not too bad.
Did you ever, like when you were a little kid, not want to go somewhere your whole family was going, and you're like, if I just hide, they'll just go without me?
Yes.
It never works out. I always got in trouble.
I once did that on the way to the place. I, scrunched down in the floorboard of the car, hoping that they would, leave me in the car. Because I would just rather be in the car. You know, we used to be able to do that. My mom would go to Kroger and leave us kids in the car, and we just roll the windows down and play games or do whatever.
Yeah.
As long as we didn't run the car or run it into the building.
Right.
Or anything like that.
Yeah.
Caitlin, have you ever been forgotten at a place?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't remember a time that has happened.
It's because you have good parents.
Yeah.
More mindful, at least.
Yeah. Okay, I've been reading a book. This is not my cultural consumption, although it could be. I've been reading a book that he said that to have productive kids and healthy kids, you've got to be worse parents, and not be so committed to being on top of everything and such good parents.
Totally agree.
Let them run and hurt themselves in the woods, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting idea. I'm not sure how well it would fly if I told people, you should just be bad parents. You want to have healthy kids, folks, be a bad parent.
That's totally true. I have a cousin that when we both graduated high school, he was at least 6-8 weeks into college, and he calls me and he says, hey, I need your help. How do I do laundry? Because he'd never done it, because his mom always did it. Should have ignored him more.
They should just ignore him.
He'll figure it out.
Of course, sometimes you ignore them, and then the stuff just doesn't get done.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so I'm going to tell a story on Miles, actually. Sorry, Miles. You're probably not going to watch this anyway. But we have our kids all do their own laundry, right? Sometimes it doesn't turn out so well, and we have to rebuy some pants that have been shrunk or, whatever. That's fine, all part of the process. But I went down into his room the other day, and it was covered. There was a basket of clean laundry, but the entire floor was covered in dirty clothes and dishes. We expect them to clear their own stuff and take their stuff to the sink and all that stuff. He hadn't done either, right? And so his whole room smelled bad and in dirty clothes, and he's been going to the gym, so it's sweaty, smelly clothes.
Yeah.
So
Miles, that's gross.
Yeah, that's pretty gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, bro.
Don't do that.
I did that though too.
I totally did.
In college, I was the smelly roommate, the messy, smelly roommate, and my roommate was a super neat-knit kind of person who had to have everything in place, and he kept real close watch on his finances, and always had plenty in a clean car, and that's not me. Yeah. It's more me now that I'm an adult and take responsibility for my life, but at the time, it was not me at all.
Yeah.
So, and I ran cross country.
Ooh.
Yeah. So in college, did you ever stay in the dorm in college? No, you never did?
No.
Okay. Okay, well, at home, how often do your sheets get washed?
Like now or like back in college and
Any
high
of it.
school?
Yeah, now or then. Which is grossest?
It was grosser in high school, because I would go, I don't even know how long, because by like freshman year, at least, or at the latest, my parents had me doing my own laundry, and so it would just happen whenever I was like, oh, I should probably wash these.
Whenever it crossed your mind.
Yeah, and I played tennis half the year, so I'm like, I had that going on, and then, but it got better in college because I've become more of a neat freak than I was before. And so.
You're becoming a productive, responsible adult, right?
And a neat freak.
Yeah.
I get a little OCD about some things.
Yeah.
So.
My sheets in college, I ran cross country, and so we would get up in the morning like 5:45 for our morning run. Then I would go back to the dorm because I didn't have a class until like 9 a.m. I would go back to sleep without taking a shower. Okay, right? Did this for entire semester. I would put my sheets on the mattress the first day of school and not take them off until the last day of semester.
Ooh.
And then I would take them home, wrap them up, take them home, and wash them at home. So
that's gross, man.
Isn't that just gross?
That's gross.
That's just gross. I know. I'm a well-adjusted, productive, responsible adult now. So
Now.
yeah.
Now
I am. Misha is a productive, well-adjusted, responsible adult, and helps me out with that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, all right. So let's talk about stuff. All right. So it's time for our productive, or not our productive, but our. I'm going to start this part over. All right. Well, we have an interesting conversation about flags and stuff in a minute. But first, let's talk about what you've been consuming in the cultural arena. Caitlin, what you been? All right. Well, we have an interesting conversation about flags and stuff in a minute. But first, let's talk about what you've been consuming in the cultural arena. Caitlin, what you been reading, watching, listening to?
I recently finished watching a documentary called The Fire That Took Her. It's about a woman who had gas poured on her, and then she was lit on fire, and then survived, and was the first ever murder victim to give her own testimony in the trial for the one who killed her.
So she eventually died?
Yes. So because she was in the hospital, so they obviously and she had burns all over her body, and they didn't for how bad the burns were, they didn't expect her to survive the first just few days. Mm-hmm. And then but they're like, oh, you're like, there was slight improvement enough to where they could at least give a trial for the act of violence on her, and then they're like, it would make an even stronger argument ultimately if she died, and unfortunately she did, because it was too much for her body to keep fighting.
Oh yeah.
Because of it, like, completely, like, I think it was like over 90% of her body was burned.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you come back from that.
Yeah, no. But she didn't, and there was a whole moment of she didn't believe in the death penalty, but her kids wanted him to be put to death. But ultimately, they did a life sentence on him with no chance of parole.
Did she know the guy?
It was her boyfriend.
Oh, yeah.
And supposedly...
and this was done on purpose.
Yeah. Well, so...
I don't know how I suppose you could spill gas and then
so the story was, so she had trouble with addiction of drugs and alcohol, and supposedly they were on their way to, he was going to take her to rehab. But he was part of the problem of her addiction, because he would fuel it. Well, they stopped at a gas station. They'd been fighting, so they got out. She ended up throwing like a drink at him, and therefore got him covered in soda or whatever. So he went and then eventually grabbed a thing of gasoline, poured it all over her to make it even. And he tried to make it look like she had asked for a cigarette, like a light for a cigarette, instead of him just lighting her on fire out of vengeance. But it was out of vengeance that he did that. So, yeah, it was pretty wild.
Yeesh.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
That is intense.
Yeah.
Would you recommend?
If you're, like, into crime documentaries and things, yeah.
Yeah,
but
like true crime stuff?
There is, like, video footage of her on fire. And so, it's not for everyone.
Is this the kind of media that you consume all the time? And I have a reason why I'm asking that.
Not all the time, but I enjoy watching it.
Okay.
Because it's interesting to me.
I ask because the majority of the women that I work with all watch like true crime and murder podcasts all the time. And it's fascinating to me that it's so consistent. And guys are just like, no, I don't care. It's just interesting.
Yeah. Only Murders in the Building?
What about it?
You like it?
Oh, that's a thing.
Did you watch it?
I've watched the first 2 seasons and like...
Did you get through it all the way?
Not the entirety of the 3rd season, because I got tired of seeing Meryl Streep. I don't know why. But I just am not a fan of Meryl Streep. Because she's an incredible talent. But I'm just not a fan of her for whatever reason.
Okay.
So
that's a hot take. Like,
it is.
Okay, so she went for so long, was nominated so many times and never won an Oscar, and then she finally did. But did she? Yeah, I think so.
Would have assumed that she'd won a lot of things. I know she's really good. I just personally, I also don't really care for her.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Just
I think I like her well enough. I didn't like her as the witch in Into the Woods, but I have very, very specific tastes of her Into the Woods. But anyway, all right, Josh, what you got? What are you consuming?
I watch Seinfeld as background noise because I've done that with The Office for so long that it's like I can't do it anymore. So
right.
Seinfeld's the new background noise. So Seinfeld's pretty good, but yeah, I watched. There's a movie on Netflix called Atlas. It's with Jennifer Lopez. Yeah, I couldn't remember her last name for a second. But it's a lot of AI, type of stuff, and which is interesting because I've been dealing with a lot of AI stuff at work recently. It's just becoming more and more of a thing, whether we want it to or not. Which I'm kind of into it. I think it's fun.
Right.
But my security guy is like super freaked out by it, which I don't blame him. But
right.
Yeah, so it was good, very interesting.
They're battling.
No, they're not.
Or...
No. So the premise of the movie is they created these AI robot-looking humans that look like oh my gosh, robots that look like humans. Okay.
Right.
And,
androids.
Yeah, basically, you think Data from Star Trek without the white face. And they're butlers and assistants and laborers and that kind of thing, and they can't change their own code, they can't hurt humans, blah blah blah, and somehow one of them figures out how to, and then there's this AI revolt, and there's a war, and then they leave, and they apparently go to a completely other galaxy, which I don't know why they had to. That seems like a stretch to me in my head, but whatever. Hey, cool. You do what you want to do. And Jennifer Lopez's character is the daughter of the scientist person who created the robot that broke the code, and so she has this like personal vendetta in her head about I've got to get rid of this guy because the whole idea is that they're going to come back one day and take over.
Right.
But then so they've got the bad AI, and then they've got the good AI that they still have control over that runs these like robots that they can climb into and fight, and I enjoyed it. However, I'm also a lover of B movies, so I am not the best movie critic.
Right.
So, yeah, one of your predecessors, Matt, would always make fun of me for my taste in movies because I think movies like Sharknado are amazing. And
Sharknado.
We should have more Sharknado movies. They're great.
So bad they're hilarious.
Yeah.
And
good.
Yeah. Okay. So well, that's pretty good. I actually thought about watching that the other day. But then I was like, just wasn't in the mood for the AI thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in the tech world. Are you nervous about AI stuff?
No, not really. So I work in healthcare IT. We've already seen a lot of really cool things that AI can do. So for example, you have a radiologist that looks at a CT scan. They look at them all day long, right? But when we run CT scans through an AI has been fed literally millions of CT scans, and they'll tell you, what, that insignificant pixel on the screen that you thought was nothing, statistically, if you look at enough scans, that ends up turning into metastatic breast cancer or something crazy like that. And it's not something that the radiologist would normally pick up on, at least at that stage. And so I think that you're going to end up seeing that we're detecting things a lot earlier with AI, stuff like that. You're going to see where we start feeding in your lab results, and based on your genetic makeup and your family history, these specific lab results mean that you're going to have high blood pressure in 10 years or something. I mean, that's kind of a simple, not huge
kind of
deal one, but predictive stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. On the other end, we're also seeing where AI can be used to start breaking into other people's networks, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
networks called Skynet.
Well, that's what we lovingly call all the AIs at work, honestly.
Do you know what Skynet is?
No.
If I say Skynet.
My gosh, yeah.
All right, it's the Terminator network of AI that ended up revolting against the humans.
In the Terminator movies.
In the Terminator movies, yes. So,
Okay.
Skynet.
Yeah, Skynet.
Yeah.
Good times.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, so I've got two. All right, so I've been reading some Stoic philosophy, and one of the guys that I read recently was Seneca on the shortness of life. Right, and it's this tiny book, like 50 pages, and translated from Latin to English. But Seneca was Emperor Nero's tutor back in the 50 CE. He wrote in that time period. And and this little short book is like one of the world's first self-help books, and it's all about how to make the most of your time because the time that you live, just because you are not doing much doesn't mean you're at leisure. And he's like it's all about this whole deal of making the most of your time. So, having just read that, I decided to sit down and watch The Fall Guy. Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, and we watched it as a family last night. It pushes the 13 on the PG-13, not with sexual stuff, but language and action and stuff. And there's some accidental drug use, but it's
accidental.
Well, okay, well, purposeful by the person who gave it to him.
Uh-huh.
So I guess, so that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a spiked drink is what it was.
Okay.
So anyway, so Ryan Gosling is Colt Seavers, and if you watch the '80s TV show The Fall Guy, it makes so much more sense. But it's still a decent movie, even if you haven't seen this. Like, I was catching things from watching The Fall Guy as a kid. My dad loved that show. From the truck that he drove to the dog to the the love interest, all of it. Like, was just like triggering memories in my mind of The Fall Guy from the 1980s. So good. Colt Seavers is a stuntman who has an accident and comes back into the movie industry and has a mystery to solve. And in the TV show, he's like a sort of PI on the side and also a stuntman. Mm. So they get to blow up cars and like a lot of the stunts are car chases. Like, if you've ever seen shows from the 80s, like half the show is a car chase. Like, we're attaching a camera to the side of a car and like it takes you outside of the movie making part of it, and so you see the cameras like following the car and stuff like that. It's pretty amazing in that way. But overall, I would probably give it 3 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it, but I'm not sure if you're not a Fall Guy fan already, if you're gonna like it, because it's pretty slow. Yeah.
The story that you just, like, the summary of the movie you just gave me sounds like the perfect B movie. Like, it doesn't sound like
you might enjoy
a really good movie that, has a deep plot line. Which is fine. Not every movie has to.
Oh, okay, so Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, and what's the name of that show? Jason, what's his name? The soccer coach one on Apple TV. He's a soccer coach from America. He's a football coach from America. Goes to England and coaches soccer there.
I think I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of the name of it.
Anyway, the manager of that guy's of is it Jason something?
Sudeikis?
Jason Sudeikis. Yeah. With the mustache?
Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso, that's right. Ted Lasso, all right. So the manager of the soccer club is the producer of the movie that they're working on. And so that was a nice connection. Ted Lasso, all right. So the manager of the soccer club is the producer of the movie that they're working on. And so that was a nice connection. The actress, anyway, who portrays those two characters. So that was fun. So we're in this political series on Sunday mornings, and talking about how Christians can interact with politics in a spiritually healthy way. And so I've been like consuming all kinds of political content. Like I've been watching news shows and listening to news podcasts and political stuff. I could tell you some pretty granular stuff about the current state of the political race right now. And one of the things that's been in the news for the last couple of weeks has been the fact that Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito has flown 2 flags outside of 2 of his houses at different times that have become associated with the alt-right sort of Stop the Steal, MAGA Trump movement. And so one part of the political spectrum is like, yeah, it's no big deal. Probably because they agree with, whatever those flags communicate. Another part of the political spectrum is like, this is terrible. He should recuse himself, maybe even step down from the court. He should be impeached by the Senate, and he should be, at the very least, step down from any cases that have to do with anything related to Donald Trump or January 6th or anything related to the alt-right stuff. Okay, so this is a big conversation because it turns, the way Samuel Alito talks about it is that his wife is into flags, and one of them was an upside-down American flag, and he's like, well, she was in kind of this argument with our neighbor, and it was like a
jab at them.
A jab at them, yeah, like. Which I'm not sure if I buy it. I don't know. I don't know what to think about it. I obviously wasn't there, so it doesn't really matter what I think about it. But what do you guys think about Supreme Court justices? Like, do you think that they should be free to be politically involved and express their political opinions in public and all that stuff? What do you think?
I mean, I think it's one thing to fly a flag. Like, if he had the Gadsden flag up, I mean, is really anybody going to be upset about that? I'm sure somebody will.
That's the Don't Tread on Me flag.
Yeah.
With the snake.
Yeah. But I mean, I think there's a difference between flying a flag at your house and, maybe being more overtly politically active. Mm-hmm. If you're, protesting outside of a Planned Parenthood or something like that, is that the same as flying a flag at home? Which, side note, this hasn't got anything to do with this discussion necessarily, but it's been in my head since we started this topic, is the Babylon Bee posted an article, because they're completely satire, of, AOC is trying to figure out where Samuel Alito bought an upside-down American flag. It's like, that's so perfect. I love it. It's so funny. But I think it's asking more than a person is capable of not having opinions on topics. We don't send these justices to the Supreme Court because they are completely impartial throughout their career. I mean, that's ideally what we're not doing that. But I think it would be very difficult or outright impossible for them to not have their own political biases and their own bent. But does that mean that they can't be impartial and that they can't, still analyze the law impartially mm-hmm. And make a ruling? I hope that that's the case. I don't think that it's completely possible for them to be unbiased. You're going to have your own bias by the school that you went to, the household you were raised in. I mean, mm-hmm. the language you speak, even
the area of country that you grew up in.
100%. Yeah, and that's going to end up having some impact on how you read and translate the law. I mean, interpret the law. That's what we're asking them to do, is interpret the law. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some of that in there, but we're trusting these men and women to do the right thing.
Yes. So, Caitlin, you're of a younger generation. How many? Well, you don't have to answer this, and I'll cut it out if you want me to. But how many elections have you voted in? Have you had the opportunity to vote in?
Do you mean presidential or general election?
General, any election. Any election.
Any election? I don't keep track of that.
Right.
I mean, I mean, at least, I think, well, for sure one presidential election. I don't know if it's been two. It might have been two at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, my real question. Do people in your sphere or in, like, people that you know, people your age, even care or know who Samuel Alito is?
I mean, I wouldn't have said that I know who that is before this conversation, but I would imagine there are some people, like, when you ask questions like that, I always think back to, like, the graduating class from high school, and, like, who I would think, and I know, are more politically active than I am, and I would imagine they would know the situation, but I can't say I would know how they'd react and respond about it. So.
Yeah. So what do you think about the flag thing? Does it matter if a Supreme Court justice has expressed his political opinions or her?
I mean, I don't care that deeply because it's not my own personal. It's at their house, not my house. And I mean, there's, like, you have your limits to how far you go with your opinion, like Josh was saying, because you aren't protesting things versus just flying a flag. But I mean, they have the right to their opinion, and there's good and bad ways to present your opinion. I don't think flag is the most crazy, outrageous way to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there was a time. It's been, lately you hear about the conservative and liberal justices on the court and how the court is like divided in specific ways. There was a time when the political leanings of a justice, you couldn't even, like, the Senate couldn't even consider that aspect of the word is jurisprudence. Their pattern of ruling on cases. They couldn't consider political things at all, and a justice could not make that known as far as where they leaned if they wanted to get to the Supreme Court. And so I don't know. I'm with you guys. I think that a person, regardless of whether they make it known, it's impossible for any person to not have any biases at all. I mean, that's just human nature. Yeah. We're going to have our leanings and things like that. But it's been in the news a lot because a few years ago, like, one of the Supreme Court justices, like, spoke at a rally and was like, I forget what the issue was. It might have been abortion. It was like, abortion needs to be like this entrenched in our laws. And this is an example. I can't say specifically exactly what happened, but, like, then right after that, that sat on a case with say abortion, if that was the case that they spoke at a rally and then ruled on the case. So, I mean, that kind of thing. Then another one, like, gave to an organization in support of an issue, and then ruled on a case directly related to that issue. Yeah,
I think it should not be doing that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, when it's direct interaction with people who are, on the case, I think that's probably over the line a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
But so here's another example. A couple of years ago, Justice Clarence Thomas, who came into the Supreme Court, and I remember when this happened. I was a teenager when he came into the Supreme Court under Bill Clinton. Anyway, he came into the Supreme Court, and, like, it was this huge, like, major scandal-ridden kind of thing. He had people, like, and he's kind of been riddled by that ever since. But his wife is a huge, like, fundraiser for the Republican Party, especially for, like, Donald Trump and candidates who are of that ilk. And so Clarence Thomas has been under fire for that very thing as well. But you know what? Okay, so here's one thing where it gets to me a little bit. I think that pastors are kind of expected to have this kind of, I mean, there's a certain kind of church that's like, yes, get political, we agree, we're all of the same mindset, preach against whatever cultural war issue you want to. But I feel that the church is probably not the place to work out your political leanings.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I totally agree.
And it's almost like this same kind of deal. Like if I were flying, say, a Virginia battle flag on the stars and bars outside my house, that would probably be an issue for.
You could tell he grew up in the South
church.
because he calls it the stars and bars.
That's true. Yeah. And there was a time in my life where I was inclined to maybe possibly want to do that. But that's a whole other story. But if I were politically engaged and really vocal about my political leanings, I think that might mean that I need to step out of ministry. If I'm doing that in the church. Now, I have my own political views, but I'm probably not going to make them known. I don't feel like I can without alienating an entire part of the people that I'm supposed to be serving. Does that
I
make
think
sense?
that's a broader issue, though.
Yeah.
Like, why is it that... Okay, so I grew up in the 90s. Everybody just seemed to get along.
Right.
It didn't matter if you were, conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, whatever. Everybody seemed to just kind of get along. And I can disagree with you, and you can disagree with me, and that's okay. But now, and I agree with what you're saying. I do. But it's like, I think we have a bigger problem in our country where if you think one way, I don't like you anymore, and I can't associate with you.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem. I think it's a cultural problem that we need to figure out and deal with. It's very unhealthy.
Yeah.
I
feel like it's gotten worse over the last several years, probably
decade,
2 decades, somewhere around there. Yeah. Like there was a whole "that's not my president" thing with George W. Bush. There was a whole group of people who were like, "That's not my president," and I'm like,
whether you like him or not, it is.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's been, and so ever since then, and it flips back and forth with if it's Democratic or Republican.
Right.
Well, that's not my president. I didn't vote for him. That's not exactly how it works.
That's not how it works.
No.
Yeah.
So, in line of the things that are controversial,
Okay.
y'all have y'all seen the clip of Harrison Butker making the commencement speech at the graduation?
Yeah, he said some things that he should have known were going to get him in hot water.
Well, he also said them with intention of being told to the audience that he was speaking to.
Right.
Where he is a strong Catholic man speaking to a predominantly Catholic school. And where a small minority felt offended in that room.
Right.
But it's because it got filmed and there's a greater population outside of that college that feels opposite of what he does. That got him in hot water for that.
Yeah.
And
what hot water?
Okay.
So we need you to clarify.
I know the story. I'm up to date.
Well, what are you?
What hot water? I don't feel like he's gotten in hot water at all. Who's he got? I mean, the NFL is not on him anymore about it. His team is all for him on this topic. I think this has been actually really good for him.
It was like a really flash in the pan.
It
was, yeah.
I mean,
people calling for him to be
the sales
fired
on
and
his
all that.
jersey were top of the charts. For a week.
For a while.
I think that while the statements that he made don't reflect the entire American populace, I think that it reflects enough that it's like this necessarily shouldn't have to be completely controversial. And I think that just enough people, the loudest people, were upset, and that's why the backlash lasted a very short amount of time. Is you're only going to be the loudest voice for so long when, you're right, your jersey sales went up, your teammates are supporting you, your coach is supporting you, and the NFL backed down really, really fast.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's a business and money talks, so.
Yeah. I think the real question is, regardless of what your position is, do you have the freedom in the United States of America to express your opinions in whatever venue you are? Now, there are obviously like places that you can't stand up and speak at any time, in time, place, and manner. Like you can't take a bullhorn. This actually happened. Take a bullhorn into a private dinner party
Right.
and start like shouting at the people. You can't do that, right?
I mean, you can, but you can also be arrested.
You will be
trespassing.
escorted out and probably
You can do
arrested
anything
if you
once,
can.
Matt.
That's right. That's right. But like, can you actually, regardless of your position in society, express yourself and express your opinions in the manner? And I think that for the most part, as long as you're within those time, place, manner kind of restrictions, I think that we do, as American citizens, have that freedom. But the question is it the wisest thing to do? Is what is going to be most beneficial to the hearers? And I think this is where Scripture lands us too. Everything is lawful. This is what Paul says. Everything is lawful for me, but not everything is beneficial.
Right.
So what is going to be the best thing for me to say in this moment to build people up, to encourage people, and help them, well, as believers, help them draw closer to Christ, especially if they're far from God. Sometimes my opinion, expressing my opinion and using my freedom in that way, can actually push them a little further from God if I'm doing it in the wrong way. So anyway, that's I think a good place to wrap it up. Hey, I would love to hear from you, and I know Josh would love for you to walk up to him on the street and say,
don't do that.
and tell
It
him
won't happen.
exactly.
hasn't
we
happened to
say
me.
that every time.
Yeah.
I'm not really on the street, you know.
Neither am I. But he tells people to come and comment to me on the street, but that has yet to happen.
Tell him, okay, so walk up to us on the street, leave it in the chat. Come to us at church, and let us know, who do you think should not be allowed to express their opinions in a public manner, if at all. Or we just love to hear some feedback from you guys. So yeah, good conversation. Thanks, you guys. All right.
Jesus loves you.
Can't argue that. That's a very true fact.
All right. Well, this has been Let's Talk About Things and Stuff. Be sure to leave your compliments in the comments section, or come up to us at church on Sunday morning and talk to us about what your opinions are. And we will see you again next time.